Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 Senior Design Challenge presentations. Give it up! This is an exciting day. This is a day that many people have been waiting for, especially me. For those who I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, my name is Eugene Korsunsky. I am the professor of the Senior Design Challenge. I have the privilege and honor of doing my best to guide and coach these teams as they work on the creative work they're doing. The Senior Design Challenge is a really special class. It's a really special class because it serves as a capstone project for students from all different majors. It is a way for students coming from different academic backgrounds, different personal backgrounds, different life backgrounds to come together and work together in a collaborative, multidisciplinary way to solve a real problem in the world for real people. Regardless of what disciplinary background the students are coming from, the common thread that weaves their work through this class is the design process. So regardless of what problem they're tackling or what user group or client they're working with, each team followed the design process by first starting with empathizing with the people they're designing for. So they conducted lots of primary research, secondary research, interviews, observations, etc. They spent a long time analyzing their data to define exactly what the problem or need or opportunity is. They spent a long time ideating, which is to say coming up with lots of creative ideas for how their challenges could be solved, and engaging in an iterative cycle of creating prototypes and testing those in the real world to find out what works and what doesn't. As they do this, they seek to create solutions that consider what would be good for people, what is desirable, what do humans need. Knowing full well that you can make the most awesome idea, but if you can't figure out a feasible way to technically produce it, it's not going to work. So technical factors are also something that the students kept in mind. And of course, even if you nail both of those kinds of considerations, your project can't live in the real world if you can't make the financial viability happen. So at the intersection of human factors, technical factors, and business factors, these students sought to create innovations that can affect, in a positive way, real lives of real people. One of the things that makes this particular class different from many others offered here on campus is that it takes place over 2 academic terms rather than just 1. So the students working on the projects that you're going to hear about today have been working on these projects for 2 terms, winter and this spring term. They started by doing research, conducting primary and secondary research about the topic assigned to them. They spent a long time analyzing their data, both qualitative and quantitative, and they spent the last part of the winter term coming up with ideas for how the problems that they've identified can be solved. And most of the spring, they've spent prototyping and iterating on those prototypes by testing them in order to hone their solutions. Today, we find ourselves at the tail end of this project where we get to learn all about the process that the students have walked through and the final result that they came to. While the methodology underpinning the class is important, the class doesn't work without the people in it. So the most important element contributing to the success of these projects are the 16 students in the class. As I said, the Senior Design Challenge is a truly multidisciplinary effort. And of the 16 students in the class, we have 13 different majors represented. We have students coming from the humanities, social sciences, arts, sciences, engineering, all working together, bringing their disciplinary lenses and their perspectives to tackle a problem in a truly interdisciplinary way. This is not an individual sport, it's a team sport. And so these 16 students were arranged into 4 teams. Each team was partnered with an organization outside of Dartmouth's campus which assigned their project. The 4 organizations we worked with this term were Pison Technology, a technical startup in Boston, which gave the students the challenge of coming up with ways to use nerve sensing technology to enable patients with ALS to better communicate. Students also worked with the Weight and Wellness Center at Dartmouth Hitchcock, figuring out ways that telemedicine can be best leveraged to work on the obesity challenge. Students worked with the Women's Health Resource Center to figure out ways for new parents to stay sane while raising their kids, and with the Patient Safety Learning Lab, figuring out how better protocols of information management in a hospital can lead to fewer deaths. These are hefty problems. Today, you're going to hear about them by each team giving you a 10-minute presentation, which, as you can imagine, condensing 6 months of work into 10 minutes is going to be a little bit quick, and so you are definitely not going to hear all the details of their work. We are also not going to give you an opportunity to do a Q&A after the presentations. Instead, we're going to go one straight into the next, because following the presentations, we're going to have a project expo. Each of the 4 teams set up a board and table where they've laid out various artifacts from their project work, and they would love to answer your questions about them and to share what they've made in greater detail. And because this is about as much talking in a row of myself that I can tolerate, I'm just going to stop here, and without any further ado, I would like for all of us to welcome to the floor the first project working with Pison.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our presentation. We're really excited to share with you the work we've been doing with our client, Pison, which is a startup out of Boston. So our challenge was to leverage Pison's technology to help individuals with ALS communicate more easily and effectively. So there are really 2 parts of this project, really understanding our user, patients with ALS, as well as our client, Pison Technology. So starting off, we learned that ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, is an incurable neurodegenerative disease that affects individuals' ability to move and to speak. Individuals with progressed ALS are no longer able to communicate verbally. But rather than tell you about the struggles of communicating with ALS patients, we'd rather show you the video of one of our interviewees. So this video is of Pat, an individual with progressed ALS, trying to communicate just a 2-letter word is, using the most advanced assistive technology that exists today. So if that felt awkward to you, that's okay. It did for us too. We had no idea just how difficult it was for individuals with ALS to communicate. In fact, with Pat, the individual you just saw, it took him 10 minutes to communicate just 6 words using eye tracking and dwell technology. Essentially what this means is that Pat uses his eyes and an on-screen keyboard to pick the letter that he wishes to communicate. He then has to dwell or linger on that letter for a number of seconds in order for that to be communicated.
So that's where our client, Pison Technology, comes in. So Pison has created a device that is non-invasive and wearable that can be used to detect micro movements, even on the scale of what ALS patients are able to produce, and convert those to be used as a mouse click substitute. So this has been shown to improve the communication ability of patients of ALS by up to 3 times. So let's take a look at how this technology works. So whenever you or I try to move a part of our body, say our fingers, the process goes something like this. Your brain sends an electrical signal down your spine and nervous system to the location that you want to move. The Pison device works by monitoring a location that it is placed for these electrical signals, and whenever a strong signal is detected, that can be used to transmit a computer mouse click. But due to the progression of the ALS disease, individuals living with ALS have weaker of these electrical signals, which can be incredibly difficult to locate. As a result, it is necessary to move the Pison device from location to location in order to find one that is able to generate a strong enough signal.
So while the device is highly desired by the ALS community, only a handful of patients are currently using it. And even if it were available to the masses, they wouldn't be able to set it up on themselves because, quite simply, that process doesn't quite exist yet. And that's because right now, Pison engineers are currently required to manually set up new users of the Pison device due to the complexity of the problem that Nathan just mentioned. Also, there's no standardized procedure for setting up the device. This led us to our first insight, that the Pison solution fulfills a need, but is not user-friendly nor easy to intuitively set up. Therefore, it's not yet scalable. And throughout this entire process, the big overarching theme that came out of it was that no matter how good a piece of technology is, it's worthless if people don't know how to use it.
So with this in mind, we asked ourselves, how might we design a simple and intuitive process that can enable caregivers of ALS and patients of ALS to set up the Pison device without expert guidance. So that is where our solution comes in. Our solution allows individuals with ALS and their caregivers who have never before seen the Pison device to not only set up the Pison device, but use it on a daily basis. We do this through 3 different components. The unboxing experience itself, which includes some physical components, the software, which brings patients and caregivers through the entire setup process and calibrates the device to each patient individually, and finally, the hardware. We have some hardware recommendations for Pison Technology so they can better serve the ALS population. Within each of these main categories, there are a number of things that we were able to include that have allowed us to be successful in achieving our challenge.
So let's take a look at how this process starts and ends. So imagine a patient and a caregiver order the device online. It arrives at their doorstep, they open the box, and they're greeted, "Welcome to the world of Pison." And we know that they're so excited about this technology. They've been waiting for it for a very long time. So we kept the setup guide very simple. It's going to direct them to download the app, and it also gives them an overview of the device itself. And once the application is downloaded, we see that this is a synced application. So what this really means is that we saw Pat had his own personal computer earlier, but that is his only window of communication into the outside world. So we're not going to hijack this. This means that this device and the setup process is going to be hosted on a separate device that's going to be mirrored onto the patient computer. Once the software is downloaded, we see that we can take out the Pison device. So it pairs automatically via Bluetooth. Next, with instructional videos. So they're ready to set up the device, but they don't know how it works. Right here, we convey all of this important information and explanations with some animated videos like this. And with key takeaways, the caregiver is going to be able to understand everything that's going to go into setting this up.
So a key component to this setup process is the signal. It's really complicated, and just to make sure that both the caregiver and the patient know exactly what's going on at all times, we created a small physical brochure detailing all the information needed about it. Now we go into caregiver tryout. So before we get the caregiver to set up the device on the patient, we want to make sure that the caregiver himself knows how to use it. So what we do is we let them put it on their wrist, let them see the signals move so that they get a better idea, and then they apply it to their patient.
So after trying the device out for themselves, the caregiver is fully equipped to set up the device on the patient. So we begin this process through an anatomical approach, which first involves the patient indicating the parts of their fingers and hands that they feel the most comfortable trying to move. The caregiver is then instructed to place the device at the associated muscle location for each movement, and at each of these locations, the patient is instructed to perform the chosen activation or movement, and that activation data is recorded by the software application, which is then used to calibrate the device. So after testing this device at each of the locations that are chosen, the application will recommend placing the device at the location that had the strongest signals.
Throughout this entire process, if the caregiver or patient ever have any questions, they can find troubleshooting information at a question mark in the corner of their screen, as well as on a physical troubleshooting guide that we've curated based on some of the concerns and questions that have come up with our testers and ALS patients throughout the course of this project. Additionally, once the device is set up, we want to let the patient try it out, see what this new device does. So to do that, we have a delightful demo of using their eye tracking technology and the device to play a little game like popping in a hot air balloon. And finally, one of the most important things about this entire process is that we're keeping the needs and concerns of the ALS patient in mind. For that reason, continuously throughout this process, we have different patient check-in screens. This allows them to voice any concerns or questions they have, and to voice their opinions as well on device location selection and placement.
We talked a lot about software, but there's also a hardware component to it. We have two major physical changes to the device right now that have been implemented, such as making the strap more easily removable and also changing the strap material to be more comfortable. But we also have 3 more changes in the pipeline currently in the works, such as engraving the Pison name on top of the device for easier orientation, making the on button different from the Bluetooth button, since right now they're exactly the same and not discernible from each other, and lastly, moving the lights to the top of the device from the side of the device to make sure that the caretakers have better visibility of what's going on.
So right now, we have created the process through which caregivers and patient doers are able to go from never before seeing the Pison device to successfully setting up on patients. However, we did not start here. So we're going to go quickly through how we got to our solution. So this is really where the iterative process of human-centered design came in. We started off with just some sketches of what a setup guide might look like, and through different physical and digital prototypes, eventually got to our solution. And all of these iterations were made possible by testing with Dartmouth students and professors, with nursing home residents and their caregivers, as well as ALS patients and their caregivers. So through all of this testing and ideation, we came to three main sources of our findings. That from the users regarding the user experience, information from the technology itself that showed some limitations we did not previously know about, as well as some information from experts that we saw external consultations with.
So first, we brought some of our initial prototypes to our users themselves. And with here, we realized that information sharing at the very beginning is one of the most vital parts of the whole setup process. So they needed to know how and why the device works and how to pick up a signal. Second, another user finding came from a very powerful moment when we visited patients with ALS. So we found out that their computer is literally their lifeline. So we're not going to pose any extra risk to that. And this is why you saw we had the mirrored solution at the beginning.
Great, so additionally during this process, we began to learn more about the technology itself. One of the main findings here is that we learned that after placing the device on a user's skin, it takes up to 30 seconds before it can reliably detect a signal. That is why our solution includes inclusion of electrogel, and after electrogel is applied on a patient's skin, the device can instantaneously reach and detect these signals. So another finding we have in consulting with experts such as Dr. Joseph Rosen from Thayer Department, who's also a practicing plastic surgeon, we realized that an anatomical approach to placing the device will streamline this process tremendously. So essentially, this is what you saw earlier of putting the device directly on the muscle locations that are associated with movements that patients will perform instead of trying a more random process.
So to summarize, we're creating a complete experience from unboxing to setup. And as this slide now shows, these are all the extra components that we've added to the setup experience. With this brings us one step closer to increasing accessibility to this device to the entire ALS community.
So while we have certainly learned a lot about ALS and the Pison device itself, I know I speak for my entire team when I say that we had a lot of personal learnings and takeaways throughout this entire project. I think most importantly, we realized how vital it is to have a supportive group of teammates, especially when working on an emotionally heavy project such as this one. So it's by trusting both each other and the human-centered design process that we were able to successfully create a streamlined setup process that will help Pison scale its communication-enhancing device to reach ALS patients and their loved ones around the US. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pison team. Thank you. The next team to present is going to be the team that was working with the Weight and Wellness Center. Let's welcome them.
Good afternoon. My name is Julia, and these are my colleagues, Michelle, Ben, and Erica, and we are excited to present our work with the Weight and Wellness Center over the past 5 months. Let's start here. The reason we're here today is to discuss the epidemic of obesity in the United States. This is obesity in 2013 was considered a disease by the American Medical Association and affects people not only on a daily basis, but as a public health crisis in the United States. In fact, in 2015 and 2016, 93.3 million US adults were considered obese. To give you some perspective, that is more people than in the entire population of the country of Germany. This is not just a statistic, though. We have been speaking to patients for the past 5 months, and one person said to us that, quote, "I couldn't do anything without being in pain. My ultimate goal was to get my life back." There are many organizations across the United States that are trying to help patients get their lives back. One of these is the Weight and Wellness Center. When patients come to the Weight and Wellness Center, they've tried almost everything. They've tried the gimmicky programs, they've tried expensive apps, and they're told by their community members on almost a daily basis that they are not good enough, that they have failed, and that they should feel guilty about the way that they look. The Weight and Wellness Center takes all these needs and presents a safe environment for them to share their stories with patients, with other patients, and with providers. The Weight and Wellness Center currently offers 2 programs on an annual basis with a third on the way. The first of which is medical management, which includes monthly visits at DH. The second of which includes those monthly visits plus group courses with 5 to 8 other patients. And the third of which we're excited to announce today is the hybrid telehealth program that our group helped to create the structure of alongside Weight and Wellness Center providers. This will include in-person monthly visits at DH, but will capitalize on the technology of telemedicine in order to reach more patients than the Weight and Wellness Center ever has before. So let's unpack that a bit. Telehealth and telemedicine, its cousin, is defined as the use of digital technologies by healthcare providers to support patients outside of a shared physical location. This is particularly important in the Upper Valley, in the rural community where we all live, because some patients have to drive over 150 miles one way to come from their homes to the Weight and Wellness Center. And so we hope that by bringing telemedicine to DHMC, that we'll be able to help folks who don't only live in the Hanover area, but who live as far as the Canadian border. This has led us to our first challenge, which was to leverage the technology of telemedicine to benefit the Weight and Wellness Center and its patients. We quickly learned that you weren't able to help people by just installing fancy videos and video equipment, and you weren't able to help people by downloading Zoom or another telehealth software. We came across this interesting observation. If you were to break down a patient's year, hour by hour, you would see that only 0.4% of a patient's time is spent at the Weight and Wellness Center, and that it would include in-person or telemedicine visits. That other 64.3% of their waking hours are spent just living. That means when they go out to restaurants, when they're with their families, when they're on social media. And we've decided that we want to help patients when providers can't during those other waking hours, during that 64.3% of their time. This led us to the main insight that has guided our solution, which is that if we don't leverage at-home solutions to help patients, we're missing out on a huge opportunity.
So that brings us to our new challenge, which was reframed as to create an architecture in which telemedicine, used as one tool among many, will benefit the WWC and its patients. So with this in mind, that brings us to our solution, Wellness Anywhere. We realized that this technology alone could only do so much. Wellness Anywhere, throughout our research and findings, we realized that our solution is a series of take-home and self-guided digital wellness interventions that are designed for WWC patients across all WWC programs. Its purpose is to provide around-the-clock support, and it also fosters engagement and community. And the third is it decreases the rate of attrition. So Wellness Anywhere is comprised of 3 main parts. The first of which is the Motivation Station, a collection of at-home resources that help maintain wellness habits. The second of which is WWC Online, a one-stop public website to house digital patient resources. And the third of which is the WWC Forum, a private and secure online forum where patients can share their experiences and find and receive mentorship. Wellness Anywhere keeps patients engaged, motivated, and supported throughout their wellness journeys, in between telehealth or in-person visits, which patients across all WWC programming, current and in the future, will be able to benefit from. It fits within the WWC programming as its foundation, supporting all patients on their wellness journeys.
So we heard many patient stories during our 20 weeks, but what we want to share with you today is from a patient we'll call Sally, who, while on a night out, received many inappropriate comments about her body and weight. Normally, Sally would have to wait at least a week to go into DH to talk about how that made her feel, and that leaves a lot of time for her to slip up on her wellness journey. But now, with Wellness Anywhere, she has a series of always accessible, instantaneous ways to bolster her motivation levels and continue along that journey. So the first thing she could do is access her Joy Jar. This is part of the Motivation Station and lives both in her house and at the WWC. She can stock up on personal challenges, self-care techniques, words of motivation and affirmation, and other things that are all written by her peers. She can also turn to her mindfulness journal. She can choose to reflect on her experience through a series of guided prompts or read past entries to help bolster her motivation. If she prefers a digital approach, she can go to WWC Online and use the digital Joy Jar, which serves the same purpose as the physical one, but houses all of that material online, so she can choose a personal challenge to stay motivated, and this content she can choose to contribute to through an online form, and her peers can as well, and it's updated fairly instantaneously. She can also go over to the Mindful Journal page and choose a new prompt. These are updated on a weekly basis. And if she's feeling like getting active from the comfort of her own home, she can choose from one of a series of exercise videos that were recorded by Jean Sobolewski, a registered nurse at the WWC who is beloved by patients. After that, she can go onto the forum, which is kept secure behind a login wall. All members of the WWC have access to this forum. It's a privilege that comes along with being part of the WWC, but you need to be approved by an admin because patient anonymity and security is really important. She can choose to start a discussion about how she felt or read a previous one. Her peers can comment on it and give her words of support, and she can seek out new ways, recipes, and and methods of exercise to help continue along her wellness journey. She also, thanks to her personalized bio, can choose to connect with a mentor or be a mentor herself. In this case, her mentor, Eugene, can talk to her about how she felt and keep her moving forward on her journey. And then lastly, she can message her main provider, Diane Setti, when she needs to. This, hopefully, will help keep her motivated throughout the wellness journey and help her continue along her path to success.
So Wellness Anywhere is based off of a really key insight, which is that consistent motivation is difficult to sustain, but critical for long-term success. So patients and providers have identified for us that decreased patient motivation levels throughout their programming is the main driver for high attrition. And so you can see that this is a visualization of the weekly wobble, we call it, which is the patient's pattern of motivation throughout, let's say, a typical 3-week cycle of the program. So there are these high points in which patients are able to interface with the WWC. Perhaps it's their weekly telehealth appointment. But there are significant drops, and our solution hopes to prevent those drops. We aim to sustain motivation levels, to stabilize them through creating more constant access to the WWC support system through Wellness Anywhere. So patients are already using our solution, but there is a long process through design to get to this stage in implementation. So we spent over 320 hours doing research, and that includes interviews, focus groups, design workshops, comparing analogous models. We went through 4 different rounds of testing to improve our solution, and we went back and collected feedback and improved upon that feedback from patient surveys as well as focus groups. We came up with a budget of just under $10,000, and this budget was approved by Dr. Rothstein, who's the head of medicine at DHMC. Dr. Rothstein was so excited by the work that we've done that he's actually green-lighted a clinical trial or a series of clinical trials with Wellness Anywhere and the WWC's programs, and that will start as soon as possible so that we can test the quantified impact of our solution on patients and their wellness journeys. As Dr. Rothstein said when we met with him to present our solution, I think you've done your job. Anything that allows for more generalized impact for patients is great. You've created something that can be taken to a whole new level of implementation now. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, so that was really exciting to hear, but what's also incredibly exciting and moving for us is that this project hasn't just been an isolated class project, it has real-world impact on the community at the WWC. Diane, our primary partner at the WWC, has been giving us updates on the patients that we've been working with over the course of this class, and she told us that patients are starting to have dinner with one another, something that never happened before we started our work. They've also been asking for us to come back regularly. They've wanted more motivation station materials, and Diane even jokes about hiring us on as research assistants. So there are real relationships that have been cultivated and strengthened through the work that we've done. And lastly, we want to leave you with this. A patient told us at the end of last term, we wished we could put them, the WWC, in our pocket and carry them around. And now, at the end of 5 months of work, we are so excited that we can deliver on that wish through Wellness Anywhere. Thank you so much.
Well done. Well done. Very well done. Thank you very much to the team working with the Weight and Wellness Center. Our next team to present is the team that worked with the Women's Health Resource Center. Let's welcome them.
Hi, you got that one.
Hi everyone, my name is Dorothy.
I'm Angela.
I'm Natasha.
And I'm David.
And we've been working with the Women's Health Resource Center, or the WHRC, at Dartmouth Hitchcock over the past 6 months on how to improve the new mother experience. So originally, they came to us with this main objective: to help new parents learn about and reference the healthy development of their children aged 0 to 18 months. Over the past few months, we've conducted primary research, such as interviews with coordinators at the WHRC, design consultants, and parents at the WHRC programs. So, for some background information, two main programs that the WHRC will be talking a lot about today are the 4th Trimester Group and Taking Care of Baby. So the 4th Tri is an informal group that provides new moms and babies with an opportunity to get together, make new friends, share, and get answers to their questions. While Taking Care of Baby is a class that teaches expecting parents about parenthood and the birthing experience.
So from all of our research, we've come up with a ton of insights. And our first insight is that mothers receive too much data already and do not need another app. Furthermore, one mom told us that apps are a last resort because a lot of the apps on the market right now pertain to childcare needs and don't really talk about mom's own self-care needs. Bringing us to our next insight.
New mom self-care is neglected. So a lot of moms reported experiencing this invisible mom phenomenon in which they felt as though they didn't exist outside of their baby. And while this may seem obvious, society often overlooks mothers' struggles because this is an uncomfortable topic to discuss and is rarely talked about. As one mother lamented, "I'm mourning the loss of my life."
Our third insight is that new mothers feel isolated. So a pediatrician that we talked with said that no matter how many resources a mother has, if she feels isolated, then she is lacking in self-care. This pediatrician even said, moms can go weeks without seeing other people.
And our fourth insight is that new mothers feel excessive self-doubt. 3 topics of common concern include crying, sleeping, and unrealistic expectations of breastfeeding. One mother even stated that there's a lot of shame if you're formula feeding in public. It is an enormous burden on the mother.
Our last insight is that the WHRC does not have institutional memory and there is no set process to improve classes. So while mothers face many struggles that need to be addressed, we've also identified ways that the WHRC can be improved to better help new moms. As one person from the staff of WHRC said herself, every facilitator teaches the course completely differently.
So, from these insights, we have compiled a set of needs and constraints for both the mothers and the WHRC. On the mother's ends, we have identified that they need peer-to-peer support, they need to practice self-care, and they need reassurance that they are doing a good job. However, they are currently constrained by their socioeconomic status, their geographic location, access to information, and their respective social networks. On the WHRC's end, we have identified that they need more organized, streamlined organized information and institutional memory. However, they are currently constrained by low funding and an ever-changing staff. And their needs are especially important because if we can successfully meet these needs, they will in turn be able to turn around and help us effectively address the mother's needs. So, with that being said, our new focus is to help the WHRC effectively distribute clear and consistent information to new parents, emphasize new mother self-care, and foster peer-to-peer support. Each of these solutions, so we proposed 3 solutions, which are a redesigned Taking Care of Baby course, the creation of a 5th trimester group, and the establishment of community partnerships. These are the 3 solutions that we will be taking you throughout this presentation. And to start off, they each follow these 4 core specifications, which are to empower mothers to feel more confident, emphasize new mother self-care, establish peer-to-peer support, and be accessible to all moms.
Cool, so let's jump right into solution 1, which is Taking Care of Baby Revitalized. So this features creating a facilitator onboarding to maximize class time, including information on parent self-care and activities, reinventing lectures and activities to increase engagement and learning, finally, continually testing and improving the lecture and activities. So we have quite a few deliverables, so please bear with us. The first of which being a full set of facilitator onboarding guides, including a completely redesigned Taking Care of Baby slide deck. Second, an accessible survey to be sent out after every course to continually improve the course. Third, a different room setup to promote engagement and discussion between parents. Fourth, a redesigned drive for facilitators to access every single iteration of every class, every material, so that they can build off of one another. Fifth is a self-reflection activity to promote self-care. And lastly, a WHRC slide guide so that not only is Taking Care of Baby redesigned in slides, but all of their other courses can also. So how did we get here? Our first iteration was very different. You're looking at the current topic breakdown of past taking care of baby, and we just thought, why not create a new taking care of mommy class to address these lacking topics? Turns out the WHRC got feedback that if moms don't already invest in self-care, then they will not take an optional class about it. So instead, this leads us to what we have today, which is integrating taking care of mommy into taking care of baby. Next, we thought that we would create some informational posters that will help moms remember what they learned at taking care of baby, but through feedback, we next iterated that they should be instead kind of like a take-home note system so that they can write their own thoughts down, as well as our first iteration of the reflection activity. And finally, this is our redesigned slide deck, an example of which is the old WHRC slide and new slides that we created for taking care of baby. And these solutions and materials will be implemented in taking care of baby from now on.
So from our research, we also found that moms wanted continued support after their babies outgrew the 4th trimester group. And this brings us to the 5th trimester group, which is a weekly support group and social space for new moms with babies between 6 to 12 months old. And the program itself features establishing a non-judgmental culture, providing mothers with physical, mental, and emotional support resources and programming, creating a semi-structured social space, and being accessible to new parents with children of various ages, and it will take place on the weekends. And it's really important that we emphasize new parents here, because when we spoke to moms, they were really interested in getting their partners to also show up to these group meetings so that they could get the support that they needed. And so we were actually able to pilot the 5th trimester group about a month ago. And this is the brochure that we sent out to moms through the WHRC mailing list. And on the right-hand side of the screen is an agenda that we created and expected to follow during the first pilot program. In reality, that's not what happened at all. We weren't able to stick to our agenda because moms and babies were too busy with themselves. They had a lot of fun with each other, but they just did not want to listen to us. So we realized that it was really difficult to start activities because they just didn't want to do them. So we found that while moms felt really supported and engaged throughout the whole program, that they just wanted a relaxing, fun, and less structured environment. And so that tells us that we shouldn't try to force this agenda on them when they don't really want that. Next, we also thought it would be appropriate to then update the brochure as to not require them to RSVP in case that was also stressful. And lastly, we realized that partners didn't show up at all. And what that tells us is that the 4th trimester group has already established a no partner precedent, meaning that if people aren't going to the 4th trimester group, they're probably not going to go to the 5th trimester group either. So while these groups are mainly mom-focused now, we decided to dedicate one Saturday every season to a family event that partners and moms and babies and entire families could show up and enjoy each other's company. And so over Memorial Day weekend, we invited families to Storrs Pond, and they enjoyed some free calf. They were able to relax with each other and just had a really good time making new connections throughout their community. And we're really excited to announce, drum roll please, that the 5th trimester group is now an official regular program at the WHRC and will be taking place during the last Saturday of every month.
So we've also worked to establish community partners in order to highlight overarching support for WHRC moms and families. So ultimately, partnerships between the WHRC and the Upper Valley will provide accessible and welcoming spaces to engage moms and their families with fun outings and activities. So this would feature a variety of family-friendly activities for mothers to choose from. It would create an open and comfortable space for mothers, of course, be sustainable to support generations of mothers and their kids, and finally, be accessible to mothers across all demographics. So this would be a 3-pronged solution that would be comprised of programming and venue for joint WHRC organized events. This would also include discounts for admission, product, and other offerings based on the businesses, as well as funding in the form of monetary donations and joint grants. So we reached out to and established relationships with different organizations that we identified as ideal partners for the WHRC and share similar values and goals. So these included the Upper Valley Aquatic Center, King Arthur Flower, the Montshire Museum of Science, and Storrs Pond Recreation Area. So as you can see, we've gotten a lot done. We have already received $500 in donations from King Arthur Flower, and they're also currently designing coupons specialized for WHRC families, and this will be sent out to these families by the beginning of June. In terms of programming, Stores Pond generously donated their Dimick Pavilion for us for our Stores Pond event, and they also expressed a lot of interest in working with us for future events. So we also mocked up a proposed summer calendar of events between the WHRC and their community partners, and this would feature both regular and special seasonal events. So currently, the 5th trimester group is mom-focused, but community partner events are open to all family members. So as it stands, we haven't yet integrated self-care focused programming into community partner events, but this just highlights the importance of reaching out to future partnerships and then creating more mom-focused events such as yoga or a Q&A with an OB-GYN or healthcare professional.
So how does our project fit into the larger picture of the WHRC? To show you our impact, we have created an infographic that you can see on the left or on the right, and our unique additions can be seen under the pregnancy and parenting section highlighted in yellow. So what this infographic does is it lists all the classes, groups, and resources that the WHRC currently offers, and it can be accessed via a site that we have also created and will be handing off to the WHRC in the coming days. And so through this solution, we are hoping to create feelings of empowerment, connection, and support for all mothers at the WHRC. And before we ended this presentation today, we just wanted to take a few moments to summarize a few of the key takeaways that we have acquired over these past 20 weeks. So I personally learned that you can't curate the perfect solution, and even if you try and design for every little aspect and the detail, you're better off with an adaptable plan than you are with trying to make everything perfect.
And I learned that sometimes the most obvious problems have some of the most difficult solutions. For example, it's really intuitive to think that mothers, of course, need social support and they need self-care, but it's such a prevalent issue, which just goes to show how much more nuanced this problem is than it appears.
Yeah, and we've all learned quite a bit about, how to be a mom these past few months, and I'm terrified.
Lastly, I learned that, like David said, you can't curate everything, and the best thing to do when setbacks occur is to stay positive, because you never know when that's going to be the best thing to happen to your project. So thank you.
Great job. Well done. Thank you very much to the team working with the Women's Health Resource Center. Next up, our last presentation, the team working with the Patient Safety Learning Lab.
Hello, I'm Emma.
I'm Paula.
I'm Marissa.
And I'm Monica.
And we are working with the Patient Safety Learning Lab at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. So it's not surprising that patient complications can arise while they're in the hospital, but thousands of Americans know all too well the consequences that can happen when providers don't address these complications promptly enough, including Helen Haskell, an incredible woman we interviewed who lost her son Lewis to medical error in 2000. Lewis was a perfectly healthy 15-year-old when he underwent a non-invasive operation that year. After the successful surgery, Lewis was put on heavy doses of painkillers, which caused abnormalities in his breathing. Hospital staff weren't concerned about this, however, because of his history with asthma. Further complications arised, and over the course of 30 hours, Lewis lost about 3/4 of his blood under the care of residents and young nurses. Eventually, Lewis underwent cardiac arrest and died. No attending physician was ever called to his bedside. Lewis's story of decline is characterized in the medical community as a serious safety event, which is defined as a serious safety event is defined as a deviation from the standard of care resulting in serious patient harm and, in some cases, death. Last year at DHMC, there were 13 serious safety events, and this is considered a good number compared to other hospitals. This brings us to our client, the Patient Safety Learning Lab, or PSLL, which is a group at DH funded by a multi-year grant with the main goal of reducing preventable deaths in the hospital. Thus, our partnership was aimed to design a system that facilitates better detection and response to patient deterioration in the general care unit. We did this by starting with secondary research, with understanding these types of deaths in hospitals and what the PSLL has already done to address them, as well as conducting 25 interviews with mostly care providers and looking at their workflow in the hospital.
So following that research, we formulated 3 major insights. First, providers require quantitative and qualitative data in order to holistically understand a patient's state. However, getting the necessary ratio for both requires time and effort and is often done through inefficient means. A surgical resident that we interviewed said that a lot of times you have to make a decision without knowing everything because you only have what's available at real time. Next, we found a lack of standardization in the GCU. Providers each have their own preferred workflow, which can lead to discontinuities and delayed or lost information, which prevents the team from getting on the same page about a patient's state. A physician that we interviewed said that these tools don't support shared views of what the patient looks like and shared ways to collaborate and see each other's data easily. Finally, hospital hierarchy. Since DHMC is a learning hospital, it has varying levels of experience, and the learning hospital model places the least experienced providers at the patient bedside. This means that the provider that interacts with the patient the most has the least experience and has not yet developed the skills to recognize subtle signs of deterioration, which can lead to escalation of patient acuity and possibly death. A seasoned physician said that some of these folks are learners. You have to have a certain competency to make certain diagnoses. If you haven't been trained to it yet, you're going to tend to work at the symptom level. One way that DHMC mitigates hierarchy is through the life safety nurse role, or LSN. An LSN is an expert nurse that receives consult requests from bedside nurses. Although their expertise is helpful for inexperienced providers, their consult list currently lacks standardization and objective prioritization. They rely on these physical patient info cards to take general notes and create summaries for the next life safety shift. And while it helps to prioritize the patients, the assessments are rather subjective. So for our solution, we want to capitalize on this unique role, but also improve upon the prioritization.
So our proposed solution is the Command and Control Center, which is a monitoring system designed to prioritize patients based off of an algorithm-generated acuity score, whose inputs would include vitals, nurses' assessments, and life safety nurse notes. And the display would be monitored by a dispatcher, which is a brand new role that we designed to best accommodate for the monitoring aspect of the system. And the dispatcher would be staffed by DHMC experienced physicians. So on a day-to-day basis, the dispatcher would interact with the Command and Control Center, and from the displays, they would get information and convey that information to the bedside nurses and physicians in case their patients start to decline. They will communicate with life safety nurses to better facilitate an improved prioritization of their consult list. And lastly, they would communicate with house supervisors to better reallocate hospital resources and patients throughout the beds in DHMC.
So now diving into our interfaces, this is the screen that the dispatcher would look at the beginning of their shift. This is a high-level view of all the patients in the GCU. And as you can see on the left side of this table, the patients are organized by their acuity score as well as the change in their score. So patients that are red are the most severe, then followed by orange, and then yellow. So as a result, there can be some oranges that are prioritized over some reds because of a greater negative change. This triangular alert icon indicates a concerning patient who is currently not on an LSN list, which then informs the dispatcher to further investigate. The dispatcher would also be looking at a simultaneous screen shown here, which shows patient data over time. This graph plots patient data and their delta. And so in addition to having the time interval be adjustable, the dispatcher can then isolate different groups of patients based on different characteristics, such as geography or whether or not they've had a recent procedure. And the patients that are currently on an LSN watch list are outlined in pink. This is the LSN consult list, which is automatically generated by an algorithm as well as the staff morning huddle. After the patients are seen by an LSN, the LSN will then determine how closely to keep an eye on them throughout the categories of hard follow, soft follow, and stable. In any of these displays, if the user clicked on a patient name, they will be directed to this individual patient profile, which highlights key pieces of information which show greater context of the patient state. And in order to better inform our display, we carefully mapped out the inputs and outputs of this system. If you would like to see this more in detail or would like to see our displays in action, come check out our booth.
So how we got to this point goes back to our research methods with our secondary and primary sources. And we took this information and all the knowledge that we gained and synthesized to create our own patient care flowchart, which maps out the different hospital workflows as well as relevant events related to our challenge. We then took this information and put some sketches to the paper and came up eventually with a digitized version of this as our first prototype. We then presented this to a variety of hospital staff, including respiratory therapists, nurses, and the PSLL team, who each have their own unique use case for understanding patient acuity. From this, we realized that we can't design for every specific role's needs, and so that forced us to take a step back and to re-examine the scope of our solution. And from this, we got the learning that user testing isn't always a cookie-cutter approach to getting what will be your ultimate direct user feedback.
Following this feedback session, we plotted out their comments and suggestions on an impact versus effort plot in order to determine which features we wanted to further pursue in our future iterations. We also decided to conduct new interviews in order to further define who our user would be. And from this, we realized that we were learning all these new details about workflow that we felt that we needed to include in our solution, but we realized that we couldn't include it all. So we learned that not everything you learn needs to be directly applied to your design, even if it can be. Next, we created even more sketches to build upon our existing prototype and even created workflow scenarios for the LSN in order to further communicate how our proposed solution would be integrated into our proposed system. And all of this came together and brought us to where we are now with our final solution.
So going back to Lewis, the downward trend that we saw following the administration of the painkillers could have been detected by the dispatcher had the command and control system been set in place. So the dispatcher would have been notified with the alert saying, addressing Lewis's poor trending, and from that, the dispatcher would have been able to call the life safety nurse and ask them to see Lewis and attend to his bedside. So our hope for our solution is that by catching the problem early on, Lewis would have been able to improve his condition and avoid death and would have still been with us today.
In summary, our solution with respect to the command and control center, as well as the new dispatcher role, would improve early detection of patient deterioration, empower bedside providers to request early consultation, and lastly, to standardize the prioritization of the LSN consult list. So not only would our solution be able to save hospital money by reducing the number of unplanned patient transfers, but more importantly, it would be able to save lives. Tomorrow, our team will be meeting with PSLL to do a private, more detailed walkthrough of our solution, as well as an official handover of all our work the past 5 months. The PSLL team will then talk to their technician team about design or solution implementation, as well as designing and creating the acuity algorithm. Our team is hopeful that our work and our proposed solution will be able to leave a positive impact on the staff and the current and future patients of DHMC. If we can just save one life, our solution would be worth the while. Thank you.
Thank you, well done. I feel like I'm vicariously tired just imagining all the work that went into that. I want to say one more thank you to all the students for all their hard work. I want to say yes, yes, yes. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of our guests who joined us today. Thank you so much. It was great to have you here. And now we invite you to move into the next portion of our programming, which is the Project Expo. Each of the teams set up a table and a board and invite you to mingle, chat with them, ask them all the various questions you have, and do not forget There are more snacks in the back. Thank you so much. We hope to see you again next year for the Senior Design Challenge 2020.